Hey everyone, my name is Natalie and welcome back to my channel. So in honor of Libra season, I'm going to talk about the essence of Libra and what Libra actually represents for our world and obviously for astrology, but from a much broader scale, like what Libra actually symbolizes. So I filmed a video about the essence of Gemini. So this is kind of a continuation of that. I briefly talked about what Libra kind of was in that video, but I'm going to expand on that in this video. So it might help to watch that video first if you're curious about it, because it's kind of Libra carries what Gemini kind of begins, and in that video I talk about what that is exactly that Gemini represents, like the essence of what they are, of what the sign Gemini represents. So yeah, this is just kind of continuing that, because they're both air signs and all signs of the same element are connected and kind of, I mean, all signs bleed into each other, but especially of the same element, like the grand trines, they really like feed into each other's energy and symbology, if that makes sense. So the essence of Libra is that Libra is the opposition in life, in the universe, in astrology. Like, they are the opposition. So we have to talk about what is an opposition. Well, oppositions are two opposites connected to each other. And the Greek philosopher Heraclitus, I have notes right here, so that's what I'm looking at, because I wanted to make sure I got everything. But Heraclitus, the Greek philosopher, was actually the one who proposed the principle of oppositions or opposites. And he basically said that opposites are interconnected because they are like the same sides of one coin. Like they're two halves of one whole. So one cannot exist without the other. That's what the connection is that they both need each other. And we see this in astrology. Like, this is the basic principle of an opposition in your chart, in the axis of astrology, like with Aries, Libra, Taurus, Scorpio, Gemini, Sag, like all of these partner signs, the sets of partner signs, opposite signs, they need each other. They're facing each other. Like, if you were to fold the zodiac wheel in half, they would be with each other. They are like the same. They're just two sides of the same principle, of one concept, I guess, if you want to say that. And Libra, the essence of Libra is that idea, that principle of oppositions, the principle that they are all connected. The reason for this is we have to look at what Libra is ruled by, like what, not ruled by, but what their symbol is. Just like we did for Gemini. Gemini was the twins. Each twin is its own perspective, its own conceptualized, what was that word that I used? Compartmentalized idea of something. And it's like a boundary between ideas. They switch them off. They can't be more than one. But Libra is both of them. Libra takes two of these ideas of Gemini, these opposite compartmentalized ideas of Gemini, and puts them on one scale, because that's the symbol of Libra. And scales obviously have two sides to them. Libras aren't, like, the symbol of Libra isn't two scales with two sides. They are one scale with two sides. So oppositions, since they are both, oppositions are two halves of one whole. Libras embody that principle. that they themselves are the whole that contains two opposing sides. That's the essence of Libra. And there's a lot of other things, I mean, besides like the idea of what oppositions really are and oppositions in life, what they represent. There's other things that can support this. Basically, like I was saying, oppositions, like two opposites, create a sense of significance for each other. Like one can't exist without the other. And Libras are the connection between those two opposites. For instance, you can't understand evil unless you know the difference between what is good or evil. I mean, that's just like a very simple example. Or you don't really understand what it means to be happy if you've never been sad before. That connection between the two is what Libra is, because Libra has both of them. They are both of these ideas or principles or states of feeling or being or anything. Like Libras, any opposition or any like two opposites that you can think of, Libras are both of them at the same time, because they are one scale with both sides. So Libra, because they are the whole of the two sides, the way that they connect them is they take pieces of one side and put them into the other side to make one side more complete, to balance out the other side. And that's how the essence of Libra kind of carries like what the meaning of the opposition is. And you can also see this in the order of the zodiac. Libra is the seventh sign. So they are right in the middle of the zodiac. They are opposite of Aries, where things begin. They all of a sudden are on the opposite end, where we're starting to balance ourselves and others. It's the split between yourself and other people. But they are balancing both of them. They are the connection between the first half, Aries through Virgo, and the second half, Libra through Pisces. And the second half is much broader. We're not so focused on just ourselves. We're focused on other people and deeper subjects like, I don't know, psychology, spirituality, higher education, higher learning, religion, philosophy. We're more interested in working for the greater good, connecting with people from like broad scales, like broad, I don't know, in broader ways, or from like very far away. So Libra is connecting you and everything that has built you as an individual and your identity, everything that you have built for yourself, and everything that represents other people, things beyond yourself. They are both of them. They are the connection between these two halves of the zodiac. So because of that, and because these two halves of the zodiac, they're all on opposite ends, it's like they're kind of, I don't want to say they're like the glue of astrology, but they're kind of what is making it possible for us to have oppositions in astrology in the first place, because they're the ones that are holding the oppositions that already exist in astrology. And since they represent the seventh house of other people, and the seventh house is like your shadow self, they reflect off of other people as well. And this is kind of where I will get into like the challenge of Libra, because Libra, okay, like, because another thing that you could look at besides what they symbolize or what their symbol is and what the oppositions are, I also think about it in the tarot sense. And I took out the card because I wanted to like study it. Libra rules the Justice card in tarot. And you have the scales there, which scales represent balance, fairness. They're like the judicial symbol. I don't know if that makes sense. And then they have the sword of air, which Libra is an air sign, utilizing that intellect, that awareness, that mental awareness to balance the scales. And 11, Libra is number 7 in astrology, but the card 11 is basically in tarot combining the Magician, which is ruled by Mercury, and the High Priestess, which is ruled by the Moon. Combining the Magician and the High Priestess together to create this new balanced perspective. So it's kind of like Mercury and the Moon putting them together to create something new, to create that connection. It's kind of like almost the yin and the yang, the brain and your emotions, intellect and feelings. I don't know, like it's just that connection between those oppositions. And I mean, the mind and your feelings, your intellect and your emotions are pretty opposite in themselves. I mean, just based on what they do and how they kind of play out for us. But so it's taking 1 and 1, the number 11, which Libra rules in tarot. So 1 on its own is an individual. It's its own thing. It is separate because it's alone. It's taking 2 of these and putting them together, which creates the number 2. And the number 2 is basically kind of like doubling the power that these individuals have. It's making them even more powerful together than they are separately because they are now connected to each other. But so the 11 is, that's like what the 11 is. It's a 2, but it's not a 2 individual. It's 1 individuals making themselves 2 because they are together, if that makes sense. It's not like a 2 over here. It's like a 1, which equals the 2. I'm sorry. But so with the 2, with the 11, like Libra, it allows for cooperation and collaboration. And this can lead to gaining deeper insight into things, just like 2 does, because 2 is like the most intuitive, emotional number, just like the High Priestess. It creates greater insight because you're gaining this insight from each other. The ones are gaining it by being connected to each other on this Libra scale because they're finding what they need from each other. And this is what all oppositions in astrology have to do. They reflect off of each other because they hold the key, the missing pieces of each other. And that's why they repel each other. That's why they're also attracted to each other, because they know that they need to learn from each other. And Libra holds that principle within them. So, like I was saying, because of that, they understand this unity, this combining of individual forces to create something bigger, or maybe if not bigger, then at least deeper. When you get into, I mean, if you were alone in the world, you wouldn't know anything about yourself. This is why relationships exist, and this is why the 7th house exists, because there's parts of you that you don't acknowledge about yourself until you have them reflected off of you in another person. And that's what Libras do. But the challenge, like I was mentioning earlier with Libra, is that sometimes, especially like less evolved Libras, or maybe when they're younger, they have a harder time with this, they lose sight of that boundary that they hold between themselves and other people, because the 7th house, again, is your shadow self. And if your identity is naturally focused on other people, you can tend to lose yourself in other people. But the key to Libra, and the key to like the whole essence of Libra as the opposition, as the principle of oppositions and their connection, is for them to find that boundary, to separate themselves from other people. Not because, people suck or they're bad for them. I mean, I guess they can be if Libras are, with people that are not good for them. But it's just because Libra, the essence of Libra, is the connection between oppositions. So it's almost like they're the line between them. They're like the point in the middle where every set of oppositions in the world and astrology meets. They are that middle ground. So balancing these oppositions is what will help them find and create that boundary, so that they are then separate from the other person. They can be the opposite of what one person is, or they can take pieces of the other person and then balance themselves out through what they've gained from this person and find their own identity and balance it out with what they've gained from that person. Or they can help the other person balance out by being the opposite of what the other person isn't, or what they need to learn. So it's hard. That's like the challenge of Libras. But that's what creates the balance and the unity, the ultimate unity of oppositions, because they create that middle ground. They create the center of like the universe, almost, not the universe, but kind of in a way, because everything is like opposite, you know what I mean? There's so many opposites in the world, but they create that center. They create that middle ground. And they do it by finding the boundary between where one thing ends and one thing begins. And then they find what connects the two. They find what the connection is, why the opposition is there in the first place, why these two sides even exist. So instead of it being like a compartmentalized idea of Gemini where they're not existing, Libra kind of sees where they actually meet on the scale. So hopefully that kind of helped. I kind of broke it down to like a very human level, talking about relationships and how the essence of Libra kind of plays out in that way, like in relationships. Libras can lose themselves in people, but once they find that balance, they'll be able to separate themselves from everyone else, because they'll be able to see how the opposition, like the essence of what the opposition is, the reflecting back and forth, how it's actually playing out between two people. And that's why they're so good at, reading people and playing off of someone else's energy and understanding people on a very intellectual level, because they are like mirrors, not like a Neptunian Pisces mirror or like a Cancerian, I don't know, moon mirror, but like where they can conceptualize people and balance the ideas out, because they see where everything is connected and everyone is connected. So hopefully that made sense, and I hope this video was interesting. Thank you for watching.